Full throttle adrenaline rush. Hydro Thunder is a powerboat racing game by Midway that was released for arcades in 1999, with console ports that came later for the Dreamcast, PlayStation, and Nintendo 64. This is yet another title that I never got my hands on growing up, and I see almost nothing but love for this game whenever it's talked about. Hydro Thunder is one of those classic checkpoint catch-up racing games where you have to start in last place and reach the end of the race in first before the time runs out. Yeah, no, the type of arcade game that's crazy fun to play, but designed to eat up your money. There's no Grand Prix mode, and races are singular, but more tracks and boats can be unlocked as you win and progress through. Well, at least for the home console ports. You start out with the easy boats, which are slow but have good handling. Then medium boats are more all-around decent, and the hard boats are fast but more difficult to control. There's also a handful of boats under the bonus category. The Dreamcast manual of this game says they're elite boats, only available to those who can beat the bonus tracks, and definitely not for those who use save files provided by someone else on the internet. These boats have their own strengths and weaknesses, but one in particular has a bit more going against it than for it. Modeled after that boat movie, which took 2 VHS tapes to finish, the Tinytanic lives up to its name, being the longest and largest boat in the game. This behemoth is incredibly difficult to handle, and while it has a decent boost, it takes longer than most of the other boats to activate. After loading this bad boy up in a race, it won't take long for you to figure out that it's more of a joke selection that a lot of these older racing games tended to have. I'm no expert when it comes to sailing the 7 seas, but I am fairly familiar with completing racing games with crap that doesn't handle well. So let's put those skills to the test and see if you can beat Hydro Thunder only using Tinytanic. For this challenge, I'm going to try and beat every single track in the game. I also decided to play on the Dreamcast version, because playing it on the PS1 was unfortunately dreadful, and I didn't know that it was included in the Midway Arcade Treasures 3 collection, which I also found out is just a port of the Dreamcast release anyway. If you're unfamiliar with Hydro Thunder, here's a brief explanation on how it plays. As stated earlier, in each race you start from last place and have to work your way up to first, while also racing under a time limit that increases as you pass through checkpoints. Boosts can be collected throughout the courses to help along the way. Blue boosts will give you a 4-second long boost, and red ones give you 9 seconds. These are banked up into your boost fuel, which can max out if you don't use it. Not all of it has to be used at once though, and can be saved as needed. Before you can boost, you have to wait for the boat's preparation animation to play, and when it's done, you're good to go. You can also get a 4-second boost at the start by inputting a specific button combination before the race begins. While boosting, you can perform a hydro jump by hitting the brakes and pressing the boost button. Hydro jumping is required to hit a lot of shortcuts, along with some of the out-of-the-way boosts. Instead of having laps, most courses will have you race in a predetermined path from the start to the finish line. One of the few tracks that does have laps is Thunder Park, where our Tinytanic-sized adventure begins. In this stadium theme park course, I got my first taste of what this thing can really do with me behind the helm. Dude, this thing controls like shit already. Look at this. This is me tapping the D-pad. Oh my god, you could just annihilate these boats. This is so chaotic. I don't think I've ever seen a large boat handle the water with such grace and majesty. While it was fun knocking into other boats like a drunk captain on the SS Margaritaville, I didn't even finish this race and timed out. Like in true arcade fashion, it sends you right back to start, hat in hand, begging for more credits. Back on the water, I brushed the silliness off and handled the Tinytanic with more care. I tried gently tapping on the D-pad to make my turns, and that gave me a little more control, though it still left much to be desired. I used up nearly all the boost fuel in this course, which helped me reach second and almost first. But with it being 5 o'clock somewhere, I botched a turn while looking for my lost shaker of salt in the final lap. The corners. Oh no! My third time through, I came to the realization that once you collect a boost in this track, it's out for the rest of the race. So I made sure to save some fuel for the final lap and reclaim the respect I lost. It's time to Hydro Thunder. The photo finish! When you finish a race, your best times are put up on a leaderboard. I entered my second place time under Pooh, but that was low-hanging fruit. So I raced under the alias Jodge, because you Pooh fits where the Pooh fits. Lost Island is where we start to skip laps and go straight to the finish. Nearby the start, there's a pretty obvious shortcut to take inside a waterfall that rewards you with the red boost, and a blue one shortly after. I wasted no time exhausting all my boost fuel, and for the remainder of the race, I tried to hit other boats while I got a feel for this course's layout. Nearing the end, there's a volcano that you can jump over that will give you a red boost and some swag points. Okay. And right as I crossed the finish line, my not-so-Tinytanic's length barely moved me up to 6th place. For an easy course, that's not all that great, but improvements didn't take long. On my next few tries, I finished in 3rd and 2nd place. Obviously, that was far better, but by the time I ended those races, whomever was in 1st had crossed the finish line decades ago. Maybe it was because I was taking one too many bumps and dings in this course. After all, it's hard to avoid much of anything with the largest boat in the game.
Ooh, that was okay. That was cool.
With a little more fine-tuning, I found myself in a few spots where I just barely fell behind 1st place. Everything was starting to come together, and aside from not using the start boost, which I'll get into later, there was one other thing that would help me finally break through. You see, when you get some boost fuel, your boat goes through its process to get the boost ready, and when you're all out, your booster will retract. Tinytanic's boost preparation takes about 3 to 4 seconds, and I was blindly running through all my fuel like some kind of gas-guzzling hooligan. What I didn't realize during that time was that if you don't use all your fuel, your boat will stay in its boost mode, and when you gather more fuel, that saves you the trouble of losing those 3 to 4 seconds of prep. So rather than burning through all my fuel at once, I kept just a tiny bit in the tank and used any extra as I needed to.
Oh, please! Yay!
Very valuable lessons were learned while in the Lost Island. I just hope the next course doesn't have any more training arcs or cannon. Arctic Circle ended up being a lot like Lost Island, where I'd place poorly in the first race and slowly work my way up to higher spots, while being unable to catch up with the top contender. Saving my fuel continued to be helpful, but there was a lot of hiccups along the way that held me back.
Oh, look out!
If I wanted to attain glory, I was gonna have to add something else into the mix. Hydro jumping. About 35 seconds into the race, I came across this icy tunnel that was another plain as day shortcut, but this one could only be accessed with a little in-air time. With it not being accessible to just anybody, I had to figure out just how much time this shortcut would save me. So I laced up my Air Jordans, learned how to hydro jump, and launched myself into this mystical tunnel of wonders.
Yay, we did it! Look out, world! Make it a shortcut. Oh dear. Jade, stop this crazy thing!
It wasn't the smoothest ride, but the numbers don't lie. This shortcut was a must. So I'm continuing on my merry way, traversing the tunnels and trying to avoid icebergs unlike my father before me, but I still couldn't seem to get it together to win. That was, of course, until I heard the beckoning call of my brethren.
Hey, idiot, just mow over these penguins for another shortcut.
And so I did. Full steam ahead, I took yet another secret passageway inside a large boat. This not only offered a red and blue boost, but also had a launch pad. Seems a bit overkill, but it came in clutch when I needed it the most.
All right.
Having now conquered the icy waters, all of the easy courses were beaten. I sailed away to the Greek Isles for the next adventure with the medium courses. The Greek ruins were not as treacherous as the last two races, and boosts were all over the place to the point where you could almost chain them together without having to stop to conserve fuel. The Tinytanic has a decent boost, so I thought it'd be an easy track to get through as long as I could keep those harmful emissions burning into the atmosphere. But this is the medium tracks now, the big leagues, so of course that wasn't going to be the case. My biggest concerns lied with some of the narrow paths. You lose some speed when hitting walls, but in moments like this where you have to go down a slide, your momentum can drop significantly. There are two shortcuts that I found. One in the beginning that gives you 2 red boosts, and another later on that can be accessed by jumping up a waterfall, though this one wasn't ever really worth the trouble. 20 minutes having gone by, and the best I could manage was 2nd place. My easy course tactics were not enough to tackle these medium-sized problems. So to figure out what else I was missing, it was time to dust off the ancient texts once again. If you're a longtime viewer, what I'm about to say will likely not shock you. Start boosting. I wasn't start boosting, but I think I at least deserve a little slack on this one. This isn't your average old hit the acceleration before the start at the perfect time type of deal. You have to hold the brake at the start, then switch to holding accelerate as the 3 fades to 2, then back to brake at 1, and if done correctly, you'll get a 4-second start boost and a little bit of air. This extra fuel in the tank was a big game changer, and I started getting 2nd place more and more consistently at about 1 minute and 47 seconds per race. This time, while great on the leaderboard, was just not quite fast enough to contend with 1st. I had to be even faster than this, and on one attempt, I'd figure out how much more time I needed to shave off.
Ooh! was so close.
1 minute and 45 seconds. Just 2 seconds was all that stood in my way. Now I knew how quick I needed to be, but believe it or not, getting a minute 45 was not a simple task, and I had pretty much learned all that I needed to learn by this point, all except for one last, very minor thing. I noticed that when boosting in the air or down a slope, you don't really gain a whole lot of extra speed and are basically wasting fuel. Notice the differences while I had my boost activated in midair versus when I didn't. Now, I do think that you move faster overall if you have the boost activated in either of these situations, and it's seemingly more effective when you're going off of a large ramp. But for these small ones or moments where you're already barreling down a slide, it's almost a complete waste. This conclusion came from a lot of attempts going through the Greek Isles, and not long after I began to conserve my fuel even more. I reached the end of the race with enough gas in the tank to do what I needed to do.
Yay!
Big day for Jodge. Having played through this one course for over an hour, I can only imagine how much money I would have lost trying to reach this point at an arcade. When they said medium, they sure meant it. But I was a champion of the water now, fresh out of the Isles with a new bag of tricks. So look out, Lake Powell, there's a new captain on the course now, and I didn't reach the end before timing out. Well, let's figure out what went wrong with this one. For starters, Lake Powell loves its ramps. They're everywhere and just begging for you to go off of them. The small ones are fine, but the large ones should be avoided. The promises of red boosts and trinkle tots are a front for the fact that you'll lose far more time than you realize while hanging in the air. The second issue was the crap everywhere. Tinytanic's goofy turning makes it so easy to hit the idle boats and other things that lay all around. Despite those things, I did have an advantage, and that was actually in the Tinytanic size. It can be easy to miss some of the boosts with the sharp turns you need to make here.
Ooh, I needed that. Okay, never mind, I got it.
Since the Tinytanic is so large, you can sometimes scoop up a boost that you otherwise may have barely missed. Keeping your fuel healthy and minimizing your airtime was key for this race, and of course making sure to use the waterfall shortcut in the cave. After an hour-ish long grind session, I took home a surprising win because I played like garbage and hit a ton of walls along the way. I firmly believe that aside from fuel managing, staying grounded as much as I could was the biggest factor in my success. To finish off the medium courses, we traveled to the Far East to race in the rivers of China. The calm waters and beautiful scenery were a welcome change-up from Lake Powell. I didn't really mind placing 6th on my first try because I spent the majority of the race mapping out where all the shortcuts were. There's one right in the beginning, and another about a minute in that you can reach with a big jump, which I didn't really end up clearing, but the game respawned me to the end of it anyway, so I guess that works too. All I did from there was grab some boost fuel and rush to the finish line for a quick win. A satisfying end to an insane run of courses that were only supposed to be medium. With how much work I had to put in, I can only imagine what the hard tracks have in store for me. I brought the Tinytanic to its father's resting place at the ship graveyard, and it's as gloomy and depressing as it sounds, but the scenery isn't the only thing that's scary. Now the checkpoints are more spread out. When I reached the first checkpoint, I was down to my last few seconds, and I only got an extra 9 to get to the next one. It didn't end up being too far off, but it definitely triggered a slight internal panic. After passing through all the construction areas, the course takes us to an aircraft base, and I took it as a prime opportunity to perform the sickest tricks this game has ever seen. From there, it was more racing through these dastardly waters until we reached the literal light at the end of the tunnel to the finish line. Aside from the shorter time limit, this track wasn't all that hard. I placed 3rd on my second try and won the race after that, even though it was probably a bit of a fluke.
Please be true. Yes!
But if you thought the graveyard time limit was bad, you get a whopping 15 seconds to start in the Venice canals. I should have timed out before the first checkpoint, but I guess there's a little leniency if you're speeding through at just the right time before you hit it. The canals didn't like that though.
Where was the time to begin? Hello?
This course is a gauntlet of speed and patience that will constantly keep you on your toes. It's also one of the most compact courses I've been in thus far, which put the Tinytanic at a huge disadvantage. These ghoulish green waters were not meant to house a large slippery boat, but that's their problem, and I was gonna find a way to make it through. The Venice canals required more craftiness and cunning to reach the goal. You can't just use the clear-cut shortcuts. You gotta make some yourself wherever possible. The most useful one I found was hopping this walkway, and then doing it again in this grassy area right after, which will give you a huge boost. Nailing these jumps were essential, as was keeping my peepers peeled for any of the obstacles in my path during some of the darker segments.
Oh, the pole!
Yeah, you can't really risk taking many hits here. All your skills are put to the test, and there's no time to slow down.
It's not that serious. It's not that serious.
On one run, I collected as many boosts as I could early on, and hit both of my jumps, which landed me all the way from 7th to 3rd place, with 2nd and 1st being super close by. From there, I made a quick turn into a shortcut with a red boost, and held on for dear life as I punched it and exhausted everything I had. It was a close one as we closed in on the finish line. Even though it seemed like I had it in the bag, I still whacked the other bow with my Tinytanic for a little extra insurance just in case.
Nice. Let's go, dude.
The final track in the hard category is the unfortunately named New York Disaster. That's not on Midway though, this game came out in 1999. The streets of the fair city are flooded with poop water, and the time limits are just as low as the canals, if not lower. Eventually, you reach this big crater that takes you to the subway. After exiting the remains of public transport, you fly off a cliff into an oddly familiar sight, and that's all there is to it. While racing about the concrete jungle, I came across a few shortcuts, but they required too much slowdown for me, so I ended up not taking them. It's a little funny that sometimes going off the beaten path with the Tinytanic seems to hinder you more than help. Thankfully, there's plenty of boosts on the main path to help me keep up. One thing I did end up going for a majority of the time was this red boost in the subway. That extra 9 seconds banked up right before the end of the race was a godsend, and with it, I was able to wrap up the last of the hard courses.
Oh, I think it's it. Oh, I think it's it. Oh, it is. It's it! Number 1, baby!
With every main course in the game now finished, it was finally time to tackle the bonuses. These are your reward for placing first on all the hard courses. Judging solely on Castle Von Dandy's preview image, I can only imagine these bonuses are going to be somewhat silly. I decided to go with the Nile Adventure first because it sounded like fun, and not at all like the hardest and longest race in the game. Aw, for fuck. The Nile Adventure was not the adventure I thought it was going to be, and at over 3 minutes long, it's nearly double the length of any other course in the whole game. First, they get you all comfortable in the Nile, thinking this will just be like any other old race you've done so far. But then you reach the now disrupted ancient tomb of the pharaohs and have to get through a snake, falling coffins, and this weird cyclops monster thing.
Holy what?
Apparently, right as you enter this tomb, this guy says,
"Foolish mortal, you shall never leave."
Which I did not hear in the Dreamcast version at any point. But the man in gauze wasn't fooling around. This was especially apparent in the way that I felt like there was a lack of boosts. I mean, they're around, but it feels as though there just aren't enough to really keep you moving along. I struggled to maintain my fuel, and felt like I was always nearly out at the worst possible times. And you can't just save your fuel either, because you gotta be moving quickly if you want to have any chance in hell to reach the top 3. I played through this track for nearly an hour, and in that time, I couldn't do better than 6th place. I did try to access the secret passage in the room with the falling coffins, though I always fell just short of making it through. But that's only due to the unrealistic short time frame that the doors stay open, and if I went for it and missed, it was an automatic reset. To me at the time, it wasn't really worth the frustration, but in the midst of my suffering, I was made aware of a shortcut that went right under my nose, or rather, above it. When you enter the tomb right before the course branches off, there's this path up top that can be taken with a well-timed hydro jump. It's easily the best shortcut in this whole course, but there's also a catch to it as well. You kind of have to hit it in a sweet spot for it to really make a difference. When I first went through it, I was on the side of the wall and didn't really move up too much in the race. I soon found that when you practically go right down the middle, you get an absurd amount of speed. This launched me from 11th all the way to 4th, and at the end of this race, I finished in 3rd, shaving off an extra 14 seconds from my best time. While it wasn't quite good enough to win, it made a huge difference and reignited my hope for this course. When I came back to it the next day, I had a new plan in mind. Obviously, I needed to save a bit more time, and there was only one thing I could think of that might help with that: the coffin shortcut. If I could mix that in with what I did the day before, I just might be able to make some magic happen. And so I began to work my ass off, trying to get the perfect combo of shortcuts packaged into one run. I learned a lot of new things along the way, one being that I suck at timing this hydro jump on the top path.
Oh, fuck you, man.
And also that if you don't move fast enough while on it, you can just clip through the ceiling and back down to the normal route. After some time and hardship, the planets would misalign in a way that gave me a botched beginning shortcut, but would also finally allow me to go into the forbidden sarcophagus that time almost never permitted me to enter. And it sucked. Not even worth it. You may have not been able to tell because I was going fast through that tunnel, but the reality of it is, the Tinytanic is yet again too big and bodacious to properly utilize the shortcut. What a disappointment. Over the course of the next hour, I powered on through, hitting shortcuts, missing them, resetting. I think if I really sat down and counted all the pretend credits, the money conversion would probably have been enough to put a small down payment on a car. I'm talking over 3 hours worth of resets here. The Nile adventure turned out to be anything but. This was hell, but a true captain never gives up, nor abandons his ship.
Yes, dude, yes, yes! Oh my God.
When I hit the shortcut and reached all the way to 3rd place so early on, I knew this was the run. I also need to shout out the Tinytanic size for being able to snag the red boost in this moment. To give you all an idea of how much this course took out of me, it was about 1/3 of the length of this whole challenge run in total. The Nile adventure was certainly one I'll never forget. Finishing that course gave me a high and adrenaline boost that I hadn't felt in quite some time. Since I just kind of spoiled what it'd be like going through the rest of the bonus courses, I'll briefly break them down for you. Hydro Speedway was more or less the sequel to Thunder Park. There's 3 laps to get through and a limited amount of boosts, but it only took me 2 tries to beat this course. Up next was Catacomb, the most boring track in the entire game. There wasn't much to say about this one, I beat it in 1 try. Finally, that leaves us with Castle Von Dandy. I tried to figure out who this guy in the picture is, assuming it's a developer, though I never found a definitive answer. Racing through the castle grounds was a lot of fun, and I didn't take it all that seriously, which led to me losing a bit when I probably should have won in my first try. I blame this launch pad. Even though I didn't take the intended shortcut to use it properly, I still went out of my way to go for it. A handful of tries later, and for the record, without taking any shortcuts, I finished the race in first and proved that you can beat Hydro Thunder only using Tinytanic. Thank you all so much for watching. Aside from the absolute show that was the Nile adventure, I found a lot of enjoyment while playing through this game for the first time. The Tinytanic was at a clear disadvantage from most of the other boats, but what made it so bad also made it kinda good. Its sloppy turns mixed together with its size helped me grab boosts on more than one occasion, and it can pretty much knock any of the other boats out of the way with ease. It's another case of not judging a book by its cover. Well, kinda, it still sucks, but not all that bad when you get used to it. As a note while editing this, I was reading through the instruction manual and found this page of hydro hints that details almost everything I learned, either through my chat, online, or on my own while playing. I know earlier I mentioned dusting off the ancient texts, but that was more for comedic value because I typically referred to the wiki when I needed it. Mind you, I don't regret not really looking through the game's manual before or during this run, but I do find it pretty hilarious that key breakthrough moments in this challenge were literal bullet points on this page. Be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Also, I stream all of my challenge runs live on my Twitch channel and here on YouTube. If you'd like to check that out, be sure to subscribe or follow me on Twitch. The link to my Twitch channel, along with links to my other social media accounts, can be found in the description. If there's a challenge run you'd like to see, you can also check out the description for a direct link where you can submit your ideas. Thanks again for watching, everyone. See you in the next video.
Buenos dias, muchachos.
Chachalatas.
Josh.